khairan. Amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ramadan Kareem everyone. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayidina Muhammad wa ala alihi washabbihi wasallam. For this, I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all viewers, Nur Hafiz and many others, and thank you so much for tuning in to our talk today. As per title today, we are going to have a discussion on the topic investing in Ramadan, brought to you by Islamic Finance Students Council 2021. Before that, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Wan Muhammad Diaudin, B1 Bukhari. You all can call me Dia, a third year, second semester in Islamic Finance Students. Alhamdulillah, together with us as the speaker for today, I think everyone know Assistant Professor Dr. Nazrol Kamil, a lecturer from Kuliah Economic and Management Sciences, and actually used to teach me in Islamic Capital Market last semester. Glad to see you again this semester, sir. First,
Yes,
let me...
good to see you.
Alhamdulillah, Doctor, we meet again. InsyaAllah, I will briefly explain some introduction to Dr. Nazrol. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Nazrol. He obtained his Bachelor of Commerce and Postgraduate Diploma in Finance from the University of Melbourne, Australia, and began his work career in the oil and gas sector, where he worked at Petronas in various capacities. Upon completing his MBA in IIUM with the flying colours, by which he was awarded as the best student with a CGPA of 4.0, he joined as a full-time faculty member of the same institution. Masya Allah, Doctor, you have an extraordinary background, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. InsyaAllah. Brothers and sisters, today mark the 4th day of Ramadan. I'm pretty sure the excitement and the eagerness to do as many good deeds are still there. Therefore, we bring this great speaker to all of you who are watching to discuss how we can make investment that's not gain as much knowledge that is not only on the here on this world but also in the hereafter. Hopefully, this discussion can help all of you gain as much knowledge with regard to investment, as this program aims to broaden the knowledge among the students on the topic of investments. By the way, in conjunction with that, we're also launching a fundraising campaign to support the Kuliah and Economic Management Sciences students who are in need. This initiative is to provide students with extra food in the month of Ramadan. For that, we humbly seek contribution for all of you for this initiative. You can refer on the descriptions that the committee will be given to make a donations. Thank you in advance. InsyaAllah, before we start, I really hope all of viewers and all of the committee can screenshot or take a snap picture on our Zoom and put on your status or your story Instagram to invite all of us friends to join with our program today. InsyaAllah, before delaying anymore, I would like to invite Dr. Nazrol to proceed with his presentation. The floor is yours, Dr. Nazrol.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you to the Islamic Finance Student Council for inviting me. I must say that the title is a little bit misleading because the title that was given is investing in Ramadan. So I think just to be clear, what I plan to talk about today is mainly some of my thoughts regarding the investing, right, or investments. And I would imagine that we would do investing not just in the month of Ramadan, but continuously throughout, throughout our life, right? So I'm not sure what was the rationale for calling this session investing in Ramadan. So anyway, just let's be clear about what I plan to talk about today. But having said that, of course, I will try to, apart from sharing with you some of my experiences, having done some investments in the past, but let's also try to look at the so-called Islamic perspective and how we should view this act of investing as a Muslim. And so a little bit more on that a bit later. Okay, so I have prepared some slides. So I'm just going to go ahead and share these slides with you. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so like I said, I'll try to make this session not so much very academic and technical. So this is more of looking at investing from from a common sense point of view, and sharing with you some of the experiences that I personally went through in doing some investments in my personal capacity. So it's more of sharing some of my thoughts on this topic of investing. So I wanted to start off by looking at some of what I would consider as basic principles of investing. So in other words, if you want to actually involve yourself in investing money, so these are the things that we should have, we should bear in mind. So the first one, I think, is something that you may have heard before, but I think it's very important that we mention this and that we clearly have this before we even consider investing any money in any kind of investment instruments, which is to establish a cash reserve. Okay, somebody needs to mute.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to mute. Okay, so we need to establish a cash reserve of around 6 to 9 months of your typical monthly budget, meaning to say, this is money that you may need in the case of emergency, and you should not consider and making any investments until you've actually set aside this money, right? And this money, of course, you should put in a very safe investment instrument. Even your cash reserve, you also need to invest this cash reserve, and there are instruments where you can actually put this your cash reserve in. So we'll talk about this later. And of course, just as a note, this monthly budget may change over time, right? So with inflation and all that, so you may need to revise your cash reserve from time to time. Okay, so that's the first one. The second thing is, I just wanted to clearly, I wanted to show you this graph here, right? So suppose, and here I've just given you the kind of movement of one of the index in the stock market, right? And as you can see, there is fluctuation in terms of prices. And there will be times when the fluctuation can be, quite substantial. So I've actually zoomed to that part, which is around the year 2020, around when the pandemic actually happened. So what if you were in this scenario and you actually made your investment there, right? So this is just prior to the pandemic, and you're not aware that the pandemic was going to come. And you make, somebody needs to mute. Hello, mute. Hello, somebody needs to mute. Mute, please. We can hear you.
Okay. Satu lagi.
Okay, sorry, let me all right, let me stop here first. I will have to, because I'm also the administrator for this. Okay, okay, my apologies. Let me continue. Okay, sorry, you're still following me, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what if you made your investment there, and then suddenly there's a drop in the stock prices, the pandemic came, and then suddenly you're here, and then suddenly you need money, right? So that's when you actually will be in a very difficult situation, because you need the money, whereas your investments are actually down at that point in time. And it is a known fact that a lot of investments, in particular stocks, it is volatile. It will go up and down, right? So if you do this, you will be in a very uncomfortable position, because you may need money, whereas you will feel bad about having to sell your investments at a price that is lower, at which that you lower from what you invested at. Okay, so the point that I want to make here is that you should only invest in money that you can actually afford to lose. Right? Do not actually invest money where you may in the near future need the money for a variety of things. Right? For example, you may want to pursue some education, or your family may need the money, or you may need it for medical purposes and so on. So if you think that you will need that money, in the next 3 to 5 years, that money should not actually be invested. Particularly in investments like stocks, where you don't know how the prices are going to move in the future, right? And as a side note, I think it's very important for us to learn that we should never invest with money that is borrowed. Okay, so you should only invest in money that you actually have. It's your money, it's your disposable income. It's not other people's money that you are investing, right? So please, for me, this is a very important rule: never borrow to do investments. Okay, the next point is about, okay, so I'll just have this hypothetical scenario. Like, suppose we have 2 people, both at this point in time, at age 20, they have 10,000 ringgit, okay? And this person on the left here, the one in green, decides to go on a holiday. He decides to spend the 10,000 ringgit, okay? And then it takes him 5 years to save that 10,000 ringgit again. And after he has done that saving at age 25, he makes a one-off investment of that 10,000 ringgit, and assuming an annual rate of return of 12%, 40 years later, the value of that investment is a whopping 930,000 ringgit. Okay, so this tells you that over time, if you invest, right, from a relatively small amount, you can end up with a substantial amount. So imagine you're just investing 10,000 ringgit. After 40 years, at the 12% per annum return, you actually can get close to 1 million ringgit after 40 years, right? But the important point here is, if you look on the situation on the right there, okay, so if that person had not gone on that holiday, so instead he made that one, or she made that one-off investment of 10,000 ringgit at age 20, 5 years earlier, right? So how much will this person end up with? Okay, the answer is 1.6 million, right? So you can see the difference is substantial. So we are talking about a difference of about 700,000 ringgit. So for deciding to go on that holiday and spending the 10,000 ringgit instead of investing it immediately, it costed the person on the left, the one in green, 700,000 ringgit. And that's basically the opportunity cost of that holiday, right? So you decided to go on that holiday. Yes, you have some nice memories, some nice pictures, some nice souvenirs, but in the end, it translates into 700,000 ringgit of money that you actually could have earned, right? So the point that I wanted to mention here is that when it comes to investment, you should start as early as possible, because time is a very, very powerful way for you to improve and increase your return, right? So the longer you wait, the less return you will make on your investments. And that's a very important rule that you should have in mind. And all of you are very young. You have time on your side, so this is something that you should, take advantage of. The next point is about diversification. I don't know whether you're familiar with that name there, Warren Buffett. He's a famous investor, arguably one of the most successful investors in the world today. So he has been quoted to have said that diversification is for people who do not know what they are doing, right? But I somewhat disagree with that. For at least 2 reasons. One is, first of all, not everybody is as brilliant as Warren Buffett, right? I mean, he's one of the more, how should I say, clever or very resourceful investors. But, it's difficult to say that everyone, all of us, can actually emulate what he has done, right? Or kind of replicate his investing successes. And secondly, even if you are Buffett, you have to accept the reality that you do not know everything and that you are not right all the time. So to me, I still think that diversification of your investments is a very important element or characteristic that you need to incorporate when you're doing investing, right? So you know what diversification means, right? Meaning you're not investing in a single instrument, you are spreading your investments across different types of investments. Okay, so the next point is, as I like that particular quote there, if you want to be lucky, you need to do your homework, right? So in investing, you need to do your research, you need to prepare, you need to do some, kind of background reading, so that whenever you are investing in anything, you are investing it in a very informed way, right? So you're not just blindly putting your money into something. Right, so that's why I make that first point. Do not invest in anything where you do not have at least a reasonable understanding of what you're getting yourself into, right? And it is always good to invest in something that you are familiar with, right? So whatever industry or sector, whatever it is that you are investing in, if you are familiar with it, I think that is usually a much better option. And doing this research, I call it tying your camel. I'm sure you are familiar with that hadith, right? So before you tawakkal, before you leave it to Allah, you need to actually make effort, right? So of course, at the end of the day, the outcome of your investment, it's determined by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. But you need to make effort so that you increase your chances of investing in something that will turn out to be profitable. And doing the research, this is essentially tying your camel. Okay, then the other point that I wanted to quickly mention is that whenever we talk about investments, you must always realize that you are not in absolute control. Okay, and in the world of investments, many factors can actually determine the outcome of your investments. Right, and a lot of these things you simply cannot control, right? We are talking about macroeconomic policies. We are talking about government policies, company policies, events that happened around, in society, in the economy, things like the pandemic. You cannot control these things. It will happen, and it will affect, your investments. So knowing all these things, I think it's important to take note of two things. One is that when you're doing investments, you need to have patience, and secondly, you must acknowledge that our Creator determines everything. Right? That's a very important point that I wanted to, and I will talk more about this later towards the end of this material here. So, and I guess this is also quite challenging because we do live in an era, especially the younger generation, the generation of millennials. They are typically you live in a world of instant gratification. You want everything is, you want it now, right? You don't want to wait. These days, right? If you want something, you just go online and just order. Then one day later, you will receive it. Anywhere you go, if you have to wait longer than 5 or 10 minutes, you get anxious, you get impatient, and so on. So I think society has grown in such a way that we become very impatient and that we want things immediately, and we don't want to wait. So I think this becomes a challenge as far as investments is concerned, because most investments actually take time to actually produce results. Right, so I think you have to kind of educate yourself, of this fact that it will take time for your investments to actually produce or yield something good. Okay, so that's the recap of the basic principles. So hopefully you can make note of those. So the next thing I want to look at, which is the second part of my presentation, is looking at what you can actually invest in, right? So here I've just selected a few, and it's along this so-called spectrum of risk and return, right? So on the left side is the low risk, low return, and on the other end is the high risk, high return. So we have a mixture of different types of instruments. So I'm going to quickly go through each one of these so that we get a kind of feeling of what are the things that you can potentially invest in. Now, before we go into that, just let me do a very quick disclaimer here. I'm not going to discuss the issue of Sharia compliance of some of these investment instruments because that is going to take a very long discussion, and to do justice to the discussion, you simply do not have the time. And secondly, I'm not giving any investment advice. I'm not saying put your money here or put your money there. I'm just saying these are the things that you can potentially invest in. And before you actually do it, you should actually do your own homework, your own research, maybe consult other people, and you have to make your own decisions. Right? What I'm doing is I'm just simply sharing my personal experience and what I have learned, as well as, and I must admit also that I'm still in the process of learning, and investing is not something that you can master. It is a continuous learning process. Okay, so very quickly, one option is to invest in the Mudarabah investment account. Now, many Islamic banks today, they offer this, right? So the important thing to note is here, when you're putting your money in this, your capital is actually not guaranteed per se, right? It's not the same as your deposit. When you put money in an Islamic bank, there are two categories. One is a deposit, the other one is investment account. So with the investment account, it is not guaranteed by the bank, and it is not covered by deposit insurance or deposit takaful. However, it is, I would say it is relatively secured because it is the bank's reputation which is at stake. So the bank will make sure that the money will not be lost. And in most cases, for retail investors, this money will be used to finance home and auto financing, which is a form of secured financing. That's why it's relatively safe. In other words, if you put your money here in this Mudarabah investment account, it will be used to finance somebody who wants to, get financing to buy a house or to get financing to buy a car. All right. The return is slightly higher than your fixed deposit rates. So at the same time, the risk is relatively low. Okay, then we have these two options. We have Tabung Haji and we have ASB. Now, I call these two things, these two investment options as anomalies. And it is anomalies in the Malaysian context, in the Malaysian investment market. Why is it an anomaly? Means it's a bit strange, it's a bit unique. You cannot really find it in many other markets. Now, why is it unique? Because these two instruments are pretty much almost 100% safe, right? So if you put your money here, you are not likely to lose the money. So in a sense, your capital is sort of guaranteed. Why? Because the reputation of the government is behind these two institutions. So in a sense, you can feel very rest assured that your money will be safe, while at the same time, you actually get quite decent returns from these two investments. A little bit higher on the ASB side, but even for Tabung Haji, if you look at the rates of return there, it's quite reasonable. So you get quite reasonable rates of return, while at the same time, your money is capital guaranteed, right? With Tabung Haji, the good thing is they have already paid your zakat, right? So any returns you make is net of zakat. And you also, when you put your money there, you are indirectly contributing to the subsidization of people going to do their Hajj, right? To do their pilgrimage. So in a sense, it's a two-in-one. You are saving, you are getting a rate of return, but at the same time, you're also doing a form of ibadah by helping people to perform their Hajj. Now, ASB, as I mentioned, the rate is a little bit higher, but also there's a little bit of controversy. I don't want to go too much into that because, there are various fatwa, right, on the permissibility of ASB. But I think in more recent times, I think more fatwa have allowed investment in ASB. So, and the reason for it is because ASB does invest a lot in a conventional bank in the form of Maybank. Okay, then we have what we call fixed income unit trust, right? So this is a little bit more on the middle range of risk and return. And you can potentially invest in government securities, bonds, sukuk, money market instruments, although you are investing indirectly through a unit trust, right? Because you cannot directly buy a bond, you cannot directly buy money market instruments, because usually they will have a minimum investment amount, which is usually quite high, which is outside the affordability of most individuals. So that's why if you want to invest in this category, you have to go through a unit trust. The other option is to invest in sukuk, which has been made retail. In other words, you see, normally a sukuk is not a retail instrument. No, the minimum investment amount is like 1 million, something like that, which is quite high. Most people cannot afford it. But in recent times, they have offered what they call retail sukuk, where the minimum investment amount is much lower. For example, 1,000 ringgit. So some examples I've given you of retail sukuk that you can consider investing in is Dana Infra and Sukuk Prihatin, which was launched quite recently. Okay, then we have the other instrument, the Real Estate Investment Trust, or REIT. And basically what is a REIT is an alternative way of investing in real estate property. Okay, so instead of buying a house, let's say you have some money, you buy a single house, you actually invest in a financial instrument which will invest in real estate. Okay, so basically it's a unit trust where the underlying asset is real estate property. So I've given you some examples of Islamic REITs. We have EHB, we have the KLCC REIT, and we have the KPJ REIT. And there's actually a much longer list, but I've just given there those as an example. Now, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the benefits of investing through a REIT as compared to directly purchasing properties. Okay. Now, the first advantage of a REIT as compared to directly purchasing property is that you can start now. You see, like for you, for example, let me ask you this question. Are you able to buy a house immediately, as in like today? If I wanted to buy a house today, can I do so? The answer is probably no, because you don't have, a few 100,000 ringgit lying around, isn't it? I mean, you need to go. I mean, most people today, when they buy houses, they get financing. So you have to go to the bank and you have to go through the whole process of obtaining a loan or financing. And a few months later, and only then you actually have the money to actually purchase a house. You have to do all the legal documentation and so on. Whereas a REIT, you can basically buy it today. Today, if you have 1,000 ringgit, you can just approach one of the agents for the REITs and you can immediately purchase a REIT. So that's the first advantage. The second advantage is diversification. Now, if you have 500,000 ringgit, you have a choice of two. Either you can buy one single house, right, a single house somewhere, or you can have a small share in 20 shopping malls, 15 office buildings, hundreds of shop lots and factories, and you can diversify all these investments across, geographically. Right? So all these malls and office buildings can be located in different parts of the country, or even different parts of the world. You have REITs which are global REITs which has property in different countries. So the point is, with 500,000 ringgit, you either can afford to just buy a single property, or you can have a diversified portfolio of real estate investments. Okay, so that's the second advantage, diversification. Number three is a very important advantage, which is not often highlighted, which is divisibility. You see, if you suddenly need, so let's say you have bought a house and the house costs 500,000 ringgit, and suddenly 6 months later you need to raise 50,000 ringgit. You need 50,000 ringgit for whatever need, right? So are you able to sell 10% of the house, right? I mean, you already put in 500,000 to buy the house, but right now you only need 50,000 ringgit cash. Can you sell 10% of the house? Obviously, the answer is no, right? But if you had invested instead in a REIT, you can actually do so. You can only sell the appropriate number of units that you need to raise any cash that may come up at that point in time. And finally, the advantage of REIT investments is liquidity, right? If I decide to sell my house today, how soon will I see the money? The answer is in a long time, right? If you want to sell your house today, first of all, you have to find a buyer, and then that will take a few months. Sometimes it takes years to find a buyer. Then when you have a buyer, then you have to negotiate on the price. And then once you agree on the price, then the person has to get his financing with the bank. It will take another 2 to 3 months. So the whole process from the moment you decide, I want to sell my house, until you actually see the money, it could be many months, if not years, right? So definitely when you directly purchase a house, you do not have liquidity, right? Whereas if you look at REIT, if I decide I want to sell today, you will see the money next week, or within 1 or 2 days, depending on which type of REIT we are looking at. But the point is, it is a lot more liquid than purchasing directly, any piece of real estate. Okay, so those are the kind of sort of advantages. I'm not saying you should not buy a house. I mean, there are a lot of advantages of directly purchasing, but here I just wanted to highlight the advantages of REITs. Okay, then we have stocks. Now, over the long term, this category of investment has proven to give the highest rate of return consistently. Okay, so if you look at that, I've given you the Standard & Poor's 500 index and how the price has moved over the last, I think, more than 100 years. So generally, stocks do give a very good rate of return. And how do you actually invest in stocks? There are many options that you can go for. One is through a unit trust, right? The advantage of unit trust is you don't have to do much research. You just have to kind of, rely on the unit trust fund or the manager to invest on your behalf. But of course, when you do so, you do not have any control over what is bought, what kind of stocks are bought and sold, and the fees that you have to pay can actually be relatively high. The other option is through investment-linked insurance. Sometimes when you buy insurance, the insurance is investment-linked. In other words, you're not only buying insurance, but you're also making investment at the same time. So you have the convenience of a two-in-one product where you're not only obtaining insurance coverage, but you're also making some investments at the same time. But for me, I'm a little bit reluctant with this option because it lacks transparency in terms of what is actually invested in. You're not actually told, you're not given a lot of information about where the investment goes. Number 3 is you can use some investment service providers. One example, I don't know whether you've heard about this, Wahid Invest. So, and essentially they are providing investment advice. So you go to them and for a small fee, they will tell you, okay, you put your money here or you put your money there, or they will make the investment on your behalf based on the information that you provide them. So of course here you have to, in a sense, trust their judgment as in their capacity as investment advisors. And in some cases, some of these providers, they use artificial intelligence. They have robo advisors. So it's not actually a human being that is giving you investment advice, but it's actually a computer software or a computer program that is doing it. Now, the only thing that I want to kind of highlight to everyone is, when you are making this investment, there is the additional risk because, these platforms, right? They do not have a physical presence, right? You only know them or you only interface with them on the internet, right? So what if one day this internet website just disappears, right? Let's say you go to this platform and you put some money there, you invested some money, and you go there, you check, every week, how is your portfolio performing and so on. But one fine day, one morning, you wake up and then you go to the website, you type the URL, you type the website address, and then it says website not found. Okay, you just cannot find it. And then you say, okay, maybe it's a temporary internet glitch. So tomorrow you do the same thing, you go to the website and then it says internet not found. You do this for 2 or 3 days, for the whole week, and then you come to the conclusion this website has just disappeared. It's just disappeared in thin air. So what do? You've already invested your money. Your money has gone there. Where can you go? Which office building are you going to go and lodge your complaint? You cannot do anything because it is an internet-based platform. If this happens, you basically just lost your money and that's it. There's very little you can do. Of course, you can go to the authorities and they will say, oh, okay, this We can no longer track this company. We don't know where they are. They have disappeared, and that's it. You've lost your money forever. So that is a risk. I'm not saying that all these companies are like this, but you just have to be vigilant, and you have to do your research. You have to do your homework. At the very least, you must acknowledge that this risk does exist. And of course, the last option is to invest yourself. You open a trading account with a local financial player. These days, you can buy and sell stocks completely online. You don't actually have to meet anybody from your computer. You can do this. You definitely have more control. But and the flip side of that is you are solely dependent on doing your own research and making your own decisions. Right? So you are in control, but you are also accountable for your own actions. Okay. And as far as stocks is concerned, I think some suggestions, and this is based on my experience, you have to have your expectations to be realistic. You must have patience. It does take time for you to see results. Do diversify your portfolio. And one thing I can suggest is do consider making investments outside of the Malaysian equity market, because unfortunately the Malaysian stock market has not been performing well for the last decade, at least for the last 10 years. So I think if you do want more exciting prospects of earning a return, you should be looking at other markets. Like for example, for me personally, in recent times, I've started investing in the US market, and that's an example of some stocks that I have invested in the US market. Okay, the other option is, of course, to invest in gold, right? Gold investment, and you can actually invest in gold in many different ways. One is to actually buy physical gold. And of course, the issue here is the storage cost and the risk, right? I mean, unless you are comfortable to just put your gold bars under your pillow or under your mattress, you may want to invest in a safe in your house. So if you do buy physical gold, the issue is where do you keep this gold safely? Or if you prefer the option of a gold investment account, where you open an account with a financial institution, and here the cost will be in the form of spreads or other administrative costs which the bank may impose on you. The other option, of course, is to invest in exchange-traded fund where the underlying commodity is gold. So we have gold ETFs. And when it comes to gold ETFs, the issue is, or the cost involved will be the trading cost. And in some cases, you may have lack of liquidity depending on the market. My personal thoughts on gold, I think it's important to acknowledge that at the moment, gold is not money. It's not treated as money. It's just like any other commodity. And it being a commodity, the price will be volatile, although some people argue that it is a safe haven in the sense that when other markets are in trouble, typically people will run away from those other markets and they will run to gold. So in a sense, it is a useful way to diversify your investment. In case there are problems in the stock market, people will exit the stock market, and a lot of this money will find its way to gold, right? So it's good to have a little bit of gold as a sort of diversifying your portfolio. However, having said that, I think philosophically, for me personally, I do consider gold as a form of economic hoarding, because you are putting your money in a precious metal that is not actually being used directly in the economy itself, right? So your money is stuck in those gold bars and it's not actually circulating and not being part of the productive economic activities. So in a sense, it is a form of economic hoarding. So I personally would not want to put too much of my investment funds in gold. Next is crowdfunding. I think this is a category of investment that is growing in popularity these days. So more and more people are looking at crowdfunding as a place where you can invest. And crowdfunding basically is where you actually fund startups, companies that are just beginning. And some of these companies have not really have a proven track record in terms of their business performance. And the reality is that many of these companies will not end up anywhere. They will just fold after a few years, or they will continue without being profitable. So therefore, it is very risky. I would say it's very it's a risky proposition. And if it is something that you want to consider, you should invest it only if you have the passion for the particular startup that you are funding. Right? Let's say there's a particular entrepreneur that is doing something that is very interesting to you. You feel very passionate about whatever it is that person is working on. Then please do invest. But you must have very realistic expectations, because a lot of these startups will fail. I've only had 2 experiences so far. Both not good, right? So in the first example, I invested 100 British pounds and I only got back 8 pounds. So I lost 92 pounds of capital. I'm talking about capital. There's no return even. So I lost 92% of my capital in that investment. The second one was a Malaysian equity crowdfunding, but in the end, the fundraising was cancelled. So not great either. So I've only had 2 direct personal experiences, and so far both has not been great. But that's not to discourage anyone from looking at this as an investment option. So I think if you are, please do your homework. And for me personally, crowdfunding, you invest it if you have the passion for that particular investment opportunity. Okay, then we have cryptocurrencies. So this one is a little bit more controversial. I don't want to dwell too much on this, because I'm not an expert on cryptocurrencies. But my personal thoughts on this is, first of all, can you make money? For sure, you can, because the prices of, let's say, Bitcoin is very, very volatile. Right at the moment, the price is about, when I was writing this slide, it was about $55,000 US. And remember, when Bitcoin first started way back in 2008, it cost less than $1 US. So can you imagine if you had bought a handful of Bitcoins way back in 2008, where it cost less than $1 US? Today, each of those Bitcoins will is worth $55,000 US. So can you make money from Bitcoins? Of course you can. But remember, this is a very, very, very volatile asset class. And so you should tread very carefully, and you must have your expectations to be very realistic. For me personally, I don't invest in cryptocurrencies, because I am a little bit confused in terms of what I'm actually investing in. Okay, because I asked the question, is it a commodity, right? Is a cryptocurrency a commodity? It's difficult for me to say yes, because actually, it's not really a commodity, because what can you do with the Bitcoin, right? You can't really, it doesn't actually give you any particular utility. It doesn't give you any physical benefit per se. Then at the same time, is it money? So that's also a difficult question to answer, because cryptocurrencies are not acceptable to be used everywhere, right? You cannot go to your Ramadan bazaar and buy, I don't know, murtabak using Bitcoins, right? I'm not sure. I'm just guessing here, right? So it's not really money. It's not really a commodity. So what exactly are we investing in? So I'm a little bit not comfortable, and that's why I have avoided investing in cryptocurrencies. But that's just me personally. Again, I don't want to influence any one of you. If you are considering this, please get all the information. There are, as far as scholars go, some scholars have allowed investment in cryptocurrencies. Some scholars have said no. So it depends on you to select the ruling that is more appealing to you. The only thing I just want to mention is, if you are considering cryptocurrencies which are lesser known ones, right? So we're not talking about Bitcoin, we're not talking about Ethereum, right? We are talking about the less known ones. Please be very, very careful, because there have been a lot of scams, right? A lot. I mean, so many, right? So many scams that have taken place. Trying to advertise cryptocurrencies, you put your money there and eventually you lose all your money. right? So I've given you example of some of them there. You can Google this to get the details. But there have been so many, so please be careful if you are investing in cryptocurrencies because there are scams out there. Okay. Now the next one is what we call trading. So in particular, there are many forms of trading, and one of the more popular ones is the so-called online forex trading, which is gathering a lot of popularity in this part of the world, and a lot of people are involved with this. So what I would like to share with you is, first and foremost, if you want to go into this trading, you really have to know what you're getting yourself into, right? So you really have to understand what is online forex trading all about. And first of all, you must be very clear that it is not the same as spot currency transaction. It's not the same as you going to the money changer, you give some money and then you in exchange for some money. It is not a spot transaction. It is not like that, right? So don't equate these two, right? So going to the money changer, exchanging two different currencies, that is not exactly what you are doing when you are doing online forex trading. Now, why is that in particular? Because with online forex trading, there is this element of leverage. And if you can go to any online forex platforms or websites, they will clearly say this. And I've taken these screen captures of from one of those websites where they clearly mention this thing called leverage. So what is leverage? Now, basically, leverage enables you for a small amount of money to trade a larger size of position for your trading. Okay, so you can look at that bottom part that it says, for example, if the leverage ratio is 200 to 1, it means if you have $250, you can actually trade $50,000 worth. In other words, 200 times more. Okay, so we call this leverage. Now, just to illustrate what this concept of leverage means, let me just use another simple example. Let's say you have 1,000 ringgit, and then the price of one chicken is 10 ringgit. And let's say we use a leverage ratio of 100 to 1. What this means is that if I use a spot transaction, if I have 1,000 ringgit, I can buy 100 chickens. Okay, because each chicken costs 10 ringgit. So I have 1,000 ringgit, I can buy 100 chickens. So I give 1,000 ringgit, in exchange, I receive 100 chickens. Now, in a leverage transaction, as how it occurs in online forex trading, with the same 1,000 ringgit, you can actually buy 10,000 chickens, which kind of doesn't make sense, right? I mean, how is it that the price of one chicken is 10 ringgit, but with 1,000 ringgit, I can buy 10,000 chickens. I can buy 100 times more. So we call this a leverage transaction. And how it works is that if the price of chicken goes up to 11 ringgit, let's say, okay, so now it's 10 ringgit, it goes up, the price of chicken goes up by 1 ringgit to 11 ringgit. In the spot transaction, how much profit do you make? 11 ringgit minus 10 ringgit. You make 1 ringgit per chicken. 100 chickens, you make 100 ringgit.
Hello, sir. Are you there? Sorry, Dr. Nazrol. We cannot hear you. while waiting for Dr. Nazrol, for viewers, if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat comment, ruang comments. You can put your questions, and we also have attendance form you need to fill in to get your star point. You can look at the chat comment. I will proceed again. We are try to contacting Dr. Nazrol. Hello, Doctor.
What happened when how long have I been talking alone?
No, you stop at the 1,000 chicken tu.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Somebody should call me, in case. Okay, all right. Hold on. So what did I stop at?
The leverage on
Chicken, Okay, all right. Okay, so in this slide, right, brother? Are you able
Yes,
to hear
Doctor.
me? Okay, so I'm trying to illustrate the concept of leverage here. Okay, so if you have 1,000 ringgit and the price of one chicken is 10 ringgit, and let's say we use a leverage ratio of 100 to 1. So let's say in a spot transaction with 1,000 ringgit, I can buy 100 chickens, right? Because each chicken costs 10 ringgit. Now, in a leverage transaction, with that same 1,000 ringgit, you can buy 100 times more chickens, or you can buy 10,000 chickens. Okay, so that's basically in a leverage transaction. And now the implications of it is, if the price of that chicken goes up by 1 ringgit to 11 ringgit, in the spot transaction, you make 100 ringgit profit, right? 1 ringgit per chicken times 100 chicken, which is 100 ringgit. But with the leverage transaction, you actually make a lot more. You can make 10,000 ringgit. You can make 100 times more profit, because you are said to own 10,000 chickens. So if the price of each chicken goes up by 1 ringgit, you make 10,000 ringgit. So here in terms of forex trading, this is known as contract for differences, or CFD. So so let me just share with you when it comes to online forex trading, right? The point that I wanted to stress here is that you are not actually buying and selling currencies. Okay, so it's not. That's why I say it's not the same as the spot market, where you go to the money changer and you give a certain amount of currency in exchange for a certain amount of currency. Here, you are merely speculating on the movement of the currency rate. Just like in the example that we saw previously, you are not actually buying and selling chicken. In the leverage example, in the leverage illustration, you are not buying and selling chicken. You are just speculating on the price of chicken. So same thing with currencies. You're not actually buying and selling currencies. You are just speculating on the movement of the currency rate. For example, if you think that the currency is going to appreciate or depreciate in a certain direction, you make a speculative trade. And if your speculation is right, you will make money, and if you are wrong, you will lose money. Simple as that. So because of this, I think the majority of Sharia scholars today, they have disallowed this online forex trading, because they argue that it contains, among other things, elements of riba, gharar, and maisir. Now, just to kind of dispel some of the arguments from people who defend online forex trading, people who are already involved with online forex trading, one of the things that they say is that you can make money using online forex trading. For sure, I'm not denying that money can be made by doing online forex trading. But one thing you have to realize is that a lot of times these testimonies are very biased. And why I say this is because, let's say if you survey 100 people and ask them whether they have made money or lost money doing online forex trading, what is typically going to happen is the people who did make money using online forex trading will put up their hands. They will say, yes, I made money, right? And the people who lost money, they will keep quiet because they don't want to admit that they made a mistake by getting into this online forex trading. So when you do a survey, you will only hear you only hear the success stories, but you will not hear the stories where people have lost money doing online forex trading. So when you're looking at testimonies, as far as this is concerned, it is very biased. And this is proven in academic research. This is a psychological bias which is noted in the literature. And the other important thing that you have to take note is that when you are a retail player and you are investing in foreign exchange, you must remember that you are a very, very small fish in a very, very big pond. Now, if you look at the forex trading market, it is a $5 trillion a day market. In other words, every single day, the amount of trading that happens in this market amounts to, on average, $5 trillion. So if you are going in with 10,000 ringgit or 20,000 ringgit, you can imagine you are such a small fish in such a big market. So how is it possible for you to actually have any control or have any dominance over such a market? You are literally at the mercy of what is done by the other big players. The other big players' actions, their actions will determine prices, will determine the direction of where the market goes, and you are merely, you only receive whatever they decide, right? So if you have these big currency traders like George Soros and all that, they are the ones who will move the market, and you will only know after they have moved the market. So, to make the claim that I can make money in this market, I think is very naive. I think that most of the time, people who make money doing online forex trading, they have just been lucky, right? They have just been lucky. What they have chosen has turned out to, in their favor. And there are many other people who have also lost money. And this is not going into the whole discussion of how online forex trading is a zero-sum game, which philosophically is not to be viewed favorably. And of course, finally, some people will say, okay, when I do online forex trading, I will use technical analysis, I will use fundamental analysis. I think to me, this is not a strong argument because you can also gamble and you can also have technical analysis in gambling, right? And I'm sure you've heard of card counters, right? People who go to the casino, they play blackjacks and they count the cards. So there is science, there is homework, there is research behind the gambling. But does it make gambling correct? No, it doesn't, right? Similarly, if you do football betting, you bet on football matches, you do careful analysis of the football teams, their players, their managers, weather conditions, all these things. You do all this analysis, and there's a lot of science behind behind the gambling. But does it make the gambling acceptable? The answer is no. So I think the same kind of philosophy should be applied to online forex trading. It doesn't mean that you're using all these fancy techniques like technical analysis. It does not necessarily justify doing what you're doing. So that's my humble view on online forex trading. I will be very careful if you're going to go into this. Of course, I cannot, this is just my opinion. I'm just sharing with you what I think on this issue. And I think that the final thing is, of course, to also consider real economy investments, because sometimes, we are investing in this financial instruments, and a lot of times we don't even, we cannot feel and touch, we cannot see, you know, this investments actually materializing. It's all just numbers on the screen, and you know, it's not something you can relate to on a more personal note. So based on this, I think this is something that I'm beginning to do now. I'm looking at potential investments in the real economy. Like for example, if there's an entrepreneur who wants to invest in a new business, and then you know this person personally, you can talk to him, you can, you know, discuss his business plans. So contributing capital to his business is something that I'm, you know, looking at these days. I already had one experience where I've made an investment in a what they call cow fattening project, where they basically buy some cows and then they give it some feed to fatten up the cow, and then later they will sell the cow at a higher price. Okay, so I think that's what I wanted to spend just as a closing here. Just some final words. Whatever you are investing in, make sure it is you know, as much as possible Sharia compliant. Number two, remember you do have to pay zakat for you know, any returns that you make in particular. Number three, be wary of scams. There are a lot of the scams out there. Always remember the rule: high risk, high return. Right? Somebody is promising you an investment proposition where the risk is low but the return is high. That person is probably lying. And finally, let me share with you, I think as Muslims, we should bear in mind that the objective of investing is not just about to make money. Now, of course, we try our best to get a good return on our investment, but remember that the objective is not so much just, you know, purely to get a return. We can look at investing as a form of ibadah, right? And we are doing it for the purpose of seeking our Creator's pleasure, right? There is some wealth that has been given to us, and we are trying our best to manage this wealth in the best possible way. You know, and if we generate return from these investments, it gives us an opportunity to do another form of ibadah, which is to pay zakat, right? So I think it's important for us to look at investing as a form of ibadah, because if we do so, then we are less worried about the outcome of our investment, right? And if we say that the purpose of our investing is just about making profit, but then, you know, if we lose money, for example, then we will get upset, we will get frustrated, we will get angry, and so on. But if our thinking or our mindset is that investing is a form of ibadah, so when our investments are losing money, then it's okay. We just have patience. You know, we reda with the outcome that Allah has determined. So we are not so much affected by you know, periods when our investments are losing money. And of course, when we do make money, we need to have shukr. And finally, I think what I wanted to share with you here is that this is my own personal experience. I made an investment in a Malaysian rubber glove company. All right, so I basically invested somewhere there, and then I basically sold the shares somewhere there. So you can see that I clearly made quite a good rate of return here. And this is basically, you know, the spike in price there basically happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. When the pandemic came, the price of the stock really shot up dramatically. So I made quite a good return there. And so the question is now, what do you do with the profit, right? What do you do with this profit? Once you make money, what should you do as an investor? So I just wanted to share with you this very long hadith. I'm just going to summarize to you basically what this hadith is saying. So this hadith is where, you know, somebody heard a voice from the clouds, right? Asking the clouds to move to a particular location and provide rain for this particular area. Right, so and then it turns out that this person, where the owner of the you know, where the rain fell, was explaining you know, what was so special that he does, that you know, the rain actually moved, you know, to his area to provide irrigation for his you know, for his land. Okay, so what he basically said that, you know, I think he grows you know, kurma, you know, he grows dates, right? And then what he does is that whatever yield he gets from his growing of his kurma, 1/3 he will give in the form of charity, 1/3 he will consume for himself and his family, and 1/3 he will reinvest back into his to his business. So I think this highlights a very important principle in that whenever you make an investment, and if you do get a good return in your investment, yes, you are entitled to enjoy some of that, for you and your family. And part of it, you also have to actually do reinvestment, right? So that you can continue to generate returns in the future. But a portion of it also, please try to give, for causes other than your own interest, such as giving charity and so on. So I think that's all that I wanted to share. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Nazrol, for the sharing. Can we open for Q&A, Doctor?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I see there are lots of questions in the chats. So I think one of the question is from Siti Nur Atika. He said that currently the Wahid investment are not going a good performance. So he asked, should we continue depositing our money in their deposit because of the instability, or is there any strategy that we can follow in Wahid investment?
Yeah, okay. See, with investment platforms like Wahid Invest, you are really basically trusting their judgment. Okay, so you are saying, okay, here's my money, please invest this money for me. You are trusting them. So if you make that conscious decision, I guess you need to basically continue to go with that. So to me, that when it comes to these investment platforms, the only decision is, do you want to continue to trust them? That's it. If you think that you still have trust and faith in their ability to invest your money, then you have to just have to be patient, because like I mentioned before, investments, it will have cycles, right? It will go up, it will come down. Remember I said, you should not invest in money that you cannot afford to lose, right? So you must have in your mind, whatever money I put into this investment, I'm not going to use the money for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't need this money. Okay, so you can just leave it there. If it earns a good return, good. If you are losing money, never mind, I'm okay, right? So investments, especially if you're investing in stocks or in equities, it will go up, it may come down. So you just have to be patient. As far as whether you should continue with Wahid Invest or consider another option, it's a question of whether you trust them or not. If you still trust them, then you keep your money there. If you think, no, I think I don't trust them anymore, then you take your money out and you put it somewhere else.
Thank you, Doctor. For me, like I doing also Wahid investment, I deposit my money and I uninstall Wahid. I do not want to watch it.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good strategy, because like I said, investments, it takes time. Okay, I mentioned Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett, his one of his famous quotes is that he assumes that after he buys a particular stock, he assumes the stock market closes and only opens 5 years later. Okay, that's his style. In other words, once he buys something, he's not going to look at it. I'm not going to look at the price. I don't care whether it's up or down for the next 5 years. Okay, so whatever it is, you only want to see the results much, much later.
Thank you, sir. There is one more question from Sister Nur Atira Imani. I want to ask, I heard some people said that someone that do not have a lot of money, it is not worth to invest in gold. What is your opinion about that? I want to add on also, before this, Doctor have said that gold is not a productive asset. Maybe Doctor can explain more about that.
Yeah, okay, because you see, if you invest in stocks, right? Technically, you are investing in a business, right? And let's say you bought stocks in a telephone company, so technically your money is being invested in a in a telecommunication sector. So that's why we argue that if you invest in stocks, it is part of the productive economic activities, right? But if you were to buy gold, right, and then let's say you have 10,000 ringgit and you buy 10,000 ringgit worth of gold. You take this gold and then you keep it in your house. How is this money being used in the economy? It's not, isn't it? It's just, it's in the form of that gold bar, which is in your home, in your house. So instead of buying the gold, if you take the 10,000 ringgit and you invest in a business, for example, then the money can actually be used for something to generate economic activities. So that is why I say, for me personally, again, this is all my own personal opinion, you know, I do have some investment in gold, but just a little bit. And the reason I put it there because it's more of a diversification. Because when things go bad, you know, typically it will be reflected in gold prices. So coming back to that first question, so that's why if you have very little money, then maybe it's not worth to put into gold, because number one, gold is very volatile, right? It is volatile, it can go up and down. So if you only have a little bit of money, then maybe it's not worthwhile. Because for me, gold is more intended for diversification rather than it being your main source of your main investment instrument.
Thank you, Doctor. Is there any difference if we are investing in physical gold, we buy physical gold, or we buy like bank muamalat, the iGold? Is there any difference in the strategy?
I think that the difference is very minimal. It's just a matter of your own personal preference. You know, some people, you know, they don't trust institutions. They want to see the physical gold, right? So that's why they buy the physical, you know, either gold bars, or if you have less money, maybe gold wafers, or if you have less money, maybe you buy coins, right? So and you know, once they can actually see the gold, they can actually hold it with their hands, they feel better, right? So it's more of, you know, the person's psychology. But bear in mind that if you buy physical gold, is the issue of safety, right? You know, you put it somewhere and then somebody can come and steal, or, you know, you might forget where you put it. You know what I mean? So a lot of things can happen. So, you know, that's pros and cons. So if you buy it and you can, if you have a reasonable place to store it, then that's fine. But for me, yeah, is your own personal preference. I think there's not, the difference is more I think psychological.
Yes, Doctor. I had experience, my friends, he buy the physical gold and the physical gold bump to the floor and have some scratch to the gold. So really effect.
Yeah.
You also need to consider the handling of the gold.
Yeah, so that's the other. I don't think it will affect the value that much, because I think gold, the value is based on the weight, not on the physical appearance and the quality. So I think it won't. But I don't know. Maybe the value might be affected a little bit. Yeah, but you're right. You know, because it's physical, so you have issues about physical handling. So to me, dropping it is a small problem. Your bigger problem is, you know, let's say you drop it into the toilet or something, then you know, you will lose it, right? So yeah.
Can we have another question, Doctor?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Currently, all the questions are from the sister. Maybe sister have a lot of money right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Nurul Afika, he asked, I have a question. With the current pandemic and we have received vaccine, is there any changes happen in financial sector after they receive a vaccines? Maybe there are specific sector that we need to focus on. Your opinion, Doctor?
Yeah, I mean, this is difficult to say, because one thing that we have learned about what has happened recently with the pandemic is that nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. You know, it's difficult to say. I think if anybody you know, says, or I know this is exactly what's going to happen, that person is naive. I think, you know, again, as Muslims, we also you know, we have to acknowledge only Allah knows what's going to happen, right? So the best that we can do is we can try to, based on our logic, our own reasoning, what we think is likely to happen. If you ask me, I think the sectors that are likely to be successful is the technology related sectors, because, and in particular, you know, the innovations that are taking place today, which kind of fit into the whole narrative of what's happening now, right? You know, now with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So people are staying at home, people are working remotely, you know, so there is less People are not going to shopping malls anymore, right? So it's just changing the way commerce is being conducted. And I think this is already happening anyway. So even if we did not have COVID-19, I think this is going to happen anyway. So COVID-19 merely just pushed it, to kind of push the momentum, in a stronger way, right? But even if there was no COVID-19 pandemic, I think this is going to happen anyway. People, will stay at home, do online shopping and all that. So this being the case, I think it's good to invest in businesses where it fits this new way of doing commerce, right? So this is where we have, some, let's say, payment providers. If you're talking about the financial sector, it's not all financial sectors. We are talking about, the payment gateways. People who are providing payment systems to facilitate online transactions. So I think this is the sector that will do well moving forward. Also, the logistics sector, right? Because when you do online commerce, it needs to be delivered, isn't it? So it is the shipping companies, it is the courier business, and all these companies that will do well. So I think if we think along those lines, and if you want to invest in the right sectors, that's something we can look at.
Thank you, Doctor. I think this is the last question from Nur Ati Rahmani. I also is conclude, especially all of us as students. He asked,
Okay.
for students that do not have a lot of money, any suggestion where can we invest?
Okay. You'll be surprised that these days, when you say a little, how much are you talking about? Let me ask that question. When you say little, when you think that you have, too little money to invest, how much are we talking about? Are you talking about, I only have 5 ringgit to invest or 10 ringgit to invest? Or, so that I gauge what you mean by little.
For my situations, if Atira Imani here, you can put how many your budget. For me, I allocate my investment around 5,000.
Yeah, because you see, if 5,000 is the amount that you're working with, then that you have many opportunities. Right? Of course, if you tell me I only have 5 ringgit to invest, then I say no lah. Then maybe not. You can't really invest, realistically anywhere, right? But if you're talking about, I think, amounts higher than 1,000, there are, all those investments that I have mentioned in my talk. You can actually put your money in any of those. For example, REITs. You can, with 1,000 ringgit, you can invest in a REIT. With 1,000 ringgit, you can buy shares on your own directly. You can open an account and you can actually buy stocks. Because now I think the minimum transaction is 100 stocks. So if with 1,000 ringgit, you can, let's say if the stock price is one ringgit, you can already buy. It only costs you 100 ringgit to buy, the minimum transaction. So, and of course, if you can also go through unit trust, right? So there are all these options that are available. So I think today, the options for retail investors are much wider than it was before. Okay, you can even subscribe to a sukuk now. You can even, subscribe to a sukuk with as little as 1,000 ringgit. So, okay, but if you have less than 1,000 ringgit, so my advice, it would be, save, right? Save the money first and accumulate the money until you have, let's say, a reasonable amount, maybe, some amount more than 1,000, then you can start, investing. But I think that what I mentioned earlier still holds. I think you should start as early as possible. All of you are very young, so you have, so many years ahead of you. Please use time to your advantage and, start investing, inshallah.
Thank you, Doctor. I think the questions remarks our end of the session for today. Alhamdulillah, thank you everyone for joining us. Before we end our sessions, just to put a reminder, in the session comment we have attendance forms. You can fill the form, and also I want to remind again, we also are making a crowdfunding for the KENMS student to giving food during this Ramadans. You can look at the ruang comment Ramadan Kareem. The committee will post it again. Okay. Doctor, if possible, can we take a picture with all of us today? Maybe everyone can open your camera. View je. Video review. Okay. Okay, we were waiting for 10 seconds more. 1, 2. Okay, everyone can smile. 1, 2, smile. 1, 2, smile. Last one. Thank you, everyone. Any last word from Dr.
No,
for
it's
us
okay.
during the
I think
Ramadan?
I already talked enough already. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. From our part, we are very apologize for any technical issue or many other things. So hope we can meet again, Doctor. Is there any problem if any student want to ask Doctor regarding investment or many other things?
Can, sure. I mean, if you have any questions, just get in touch with me. I think many of you have my number already. You can just message me, or you want to send me an email. That's also fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Without further ado, we close our session today with Tasbih, Kafarah, and Suratul Nas. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.